So what if the math equation, 1 minus 1, didn't equal 0, but actually equaled 1? Welcome to the deep dive, everybody. Our mission today is to explore this fascinating stack of research on something called the Pramod Effect.
Yeah, and it's a framework by Dr. Pramod Ambadasrao Pawar. He basically blends poetry, math, and literary theory to prove that, literally everything in the universe is fundamentally connected.
Which sounds intense, right? But we're here to unpack it and give you a shortcut to understanding non-dual reality without all the usual philosophical info overload.
Exactly. We're cutting right through the noise.
So to actually grasp how this applies to our lives, we first have to understand Power's unique formula for reality. He bases it on this core axiom, which is, quote, the soul is energy. Energy is one, two is oneness.
Right. So it relies on a very specific structural progression. He starts with 2, which represents our perceived duality. The everyday us versus them or this versus that. Yeah. And then that duality meets Z, or zero-ness, which acts as a sort of mediating catalyst before it finally resolves into 1, meaning ultimate unity.
Wait, zero-ness. You're losing me a bit there. I mean, are we talking about math or philosophy here? And how does 1 minus 1 end up equaling 1?
Well, it actually bridges both. So he's framing consciousness as a literal law of energy conservation. He calls this monos energy.
Monos energy. Okay, got it.
Yeah, so think of the zero in that equation not as nothingness, but as a blank canvas. When 1 and -1 cancel each other out, they don't just disappear. They merge into a neutral baseline state.
Right, which is that 0.
Exactly. And that 0 is actually the unified 1 energy field.
Oh, wow. Okay. That connects perfectly to an analogy he uses in his book, TWOZONESS. He says to imagine 2 flames in the dark that are burning from a single spark.
Right, because the 2 flames look like separate things fighting the darkness, which is our us versus them duality. But if you trace them down to the wick, it's the exact same chemical reaction.
Which is his monos energy.
You got it. The math isn't just a metaphor here. It's a formal way of showing that the self and the non-self basically cancel out their apparent opposition.
And because he treats this oneness as a structural cognitive fact rather than like an emotional goal, it completely flips classical poetry on its head.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
You can really see how radical that is when you compare it to a classic mystic like Rumi.
Right, Rumi.
Yeah, whose work is just driven by the sheer agony of separation from the divine. Or even John Donne, who relies on this intense intellectual tension between physical and divine love.
I do have to push back on that, though. I mean, doesn't standardizing poetry into this tripartite mathematical formula strip away the emotional romance of those classic writers? Like, if you remove the longing, what's left?
Well, Pawar would argue that he's replacing that chaotic emotional longing with a sort of meditative tranquility. He uses strict quatrains intentionally to cognitively train the reader.
Train them how, exactly?
It's not about stifling emotion. It's about realizing there's no need for the agony when the separation was an illusion to begin with. He wants you to see we are already unified.
Which brings us to a concept he calls trans-deconstruction.
Right, so in traditional literary theory, like Derrida's, for example, words never quite pin down meaning. It's always shifting and chaotic. But Pawar's trans-deconstruction argues the total opposite.
He says linguistic signs actually reveal a single, stable, textual superconsciousness. Right?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And because this trans-deconstruction is ultimately about stripping away complicated rules to find that unified core, he actually takes this out of the poetry book and applies it to everyday structures.
Yeah, he really does. Like in his work, Sparshantar, he looks through this lens of unity to critique political systems. And obviously, we're just here to break down the framework, not to weigh in on the politics themselves.
Right, we're just impartially reporting on his arguments.
Exactly, but his argument essentially is that human dignity exists fundamentally beyond systemic constraints. He even uses that same simplifying logic to break down English grammar for kids globally.
Which is just so fascinating.
So why should you care about all this? Well, because the Pramod Effect offers an incredible mental shortcut. It cuts right through the exhausting us versus them binary thinking that really dominates modern life.
It absolutely does. It shows that perceived divisions, whether that's mind and matter or self and other, they're just relational expressions of one continuous reality.
The math equation on the whiteboard and the poem in the leather-bound journal aren't in different universes at all.
No, they're just 2 expressions of the exact same energy. The math and the art are one.
So we'll leave you with this final thought. If all binaries are just illusions masking a single energy field, what does that mean for the boundaries of your own mind as you absorb this very deep dive?
Oh, that's a great question.
Right. Like, where does the information end and where do you begin?